Okay, we're gonna do something special today, and we're gonna talk about Blitzo and Stolas from Hell of a Boss. We're just gonna call him Blitz for convenience's sake, even though I do believe the intentionality of him calling himself Blitz is something to be considered. First, I want to open up with a little character analysis about Blitzo, then we're going to do Stolas, and then we are finally going to talk about the fallout in Full Moon. Blitz is a businessman. The series has been very open about that. He is a boss, he is the businessman. It's the premise of the entire fucking show. The reason Blitz is an assassin, is because in the Pride Ring, where all the sinners go when they die, there is a desire for some of these lost souls who were murdered in vicious manners to get revenge on people. Blitz is simply fulfilling a business niche that he feels he can do because he is a talented assassin and he is also a very competent and talented businessman. Judging by how seasons 1 and 2 have gone, he basically won in that entire situation, and people don't seem to realize that. That's how talented of a businessman he is. He's very good at making himself the victim in every single situation, which is half of the problem in his relationship with Stolas. And another problem is that he fundamentally has self-image issues because of his traumatic past. He has problems maintaining relationships because of these self-image issues. There are a number of traumas that have made him the person that he is. And in Hell of a Boss discussion spaces, because Blitzo is so traumatized, people will read into the class conflicts and his personal traumas in a way that infantilize him and rob him of responsibility for the terrible things he does instead of looking at these situations from objective perspectives. And because of this, it becomes very contentious to talk about Stolas and Blitzo because a lot of people prefer to read into the class conflict side of the fallout instead of the character side of the fallout, which is what the show wants you to do. The show is asking you at every single point in time to read into both of these characters' traumas and ask, how does this inform the two characters going forward? For Blitzo, it fundamentally means that he struggles with intimacy in a way that no other character on the show understands except for probably Fizzarolli. His relationship with Moxie is the most strenuous in the main cast because Moxie is the kind of guy who wants approval, he wants praise. He is constantly living for validation because of the shitty treatment that he received from his father when he was living in his house. But unlike Blitzo, Moxie didn't turn that into a chip on his shoulder. He instead made it a perfectionist complex. So therefore, if there is someone in a position of power above him, he's always going to seek that approval, and he's always going to chase that validation despite how questionable the person is who he is working for, because that's how Moxie was conditioned to be. As for Millie, his relationship with Millie is a little bit more down. It how do I Their relationship is a lot more low key, but it still holds the high friction, like emotional tension, because Blitzo is unfair to Millie in a way that she is intimately familiar with. She lived in a family full of men, and this is behavior that the series asserts very quietly that she is used to, but her time with Blitz and watching him grow and learn as a person is making her reconsider her relationship with him, because it's clear that Blitzo, if there is someone in his life that he can emotionally manipulate and get things out of, he will do it. He will do it every single time. This is most evident in his relationship with Luna. Like, he expects Luna's undivided attention and loyalty because he is her adopted parent. Like, you can see, like, the worst traits of Blitzo in that relationship specifically because of that power imbalance. And I'm not saying that a power imbalance between a parent and child is a bad thing. It's just most evident in his relationship with Luna that Blitz does take advantage of these unequal positions in order to get things out of people. And then that leads into Stolas. Now, Stolas is probably the most complicated character in the entire show. His entire backstory is being pushed into a position of power that he didn't want, having to conform to norms and societal expectations that he never wanted to fill, and being pushed into an arranged marriage with someone that he did not love because he is a homosexual man. And because he has to be this kind of person, because he has to uphold the violent power structure, a lot of people come into Stolas' character wanting to only criticize the violent power structure that he is supposed to represent and missing the underlying humanization that the show is doing with him. Like, season 2 has basically been the Stolas humanization hour, and people don't like that because it's not fun to sit through. And I understand that. Hell of a Boss presented itself. It's a very fun, very goofy show where where the main business people shot people in the head and you didn't have to fucking think about it. But that would be a very boring show to watch. You would get sick of it and you would want more. And now that the show is presenting something more, a lot of people have questions and comments that the show has presented answers to, but they are answering it with their own questions and answers because they don't like the material that the show is presenting them, which I think is fine. But at that point, you just gotta admit that the show isn't for you. And the thing about Stolas is that Blitz, even in one of his worst moments in the show, we're getting into the lovers' conflict because I've basically said everything about Stolas that needs to be set up for all of this. He's a classist liar, and he's a classist liar because the society around him demanded him to be. That has affected his life deeply, and it's clear that he wants to break free of that. However, society pushes him into being a classist liar because it was the way he could chase happiness without rocking the boat, except he did rock the boat. Stella is a whole other conversation and an entire can of worms that needs a whole video. She needs a whole video to herself. She's very much complicated in the same way as Stolas. However, she is far less sympathetic because instead of choosing to recognize the society for what it is and bettering herself, she has made her internal issues other people's problem. Every single moment that woman is on screen, she is venting her frustrations about the society that she was born into onto other people very unfairly. And the one who gets the brunt of this is Stolas, her ex-husband now. It was so bad that he was being physically abused, and everybody downplays it because all they care about is the class commentary, classist liar that Stolas is supposed to be, instead of, recognizing that the situation is supposed to be incredibly complicated and that there isn't supposed to be an easy answer to this. And Blitzo's worst moment in the show is recognizing that Stolas is a classist liar at the worst possible moment he could have recognized that Stolas is a classist liar. When Stolas accuses Blitz of only wanting him for sex, Stolas is basically 100% correct. His assessment of the situation was 100% correct. I have already established that Blitz has a problem with intimacy because of the way he was raised, and instead of trying to work on that and work on himself internally, he weaponizes his trauma into his business. Ha 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 ha. Okay. And because Blitz weaponized his trauma into his business and Stolas threw that accusation at him, He lashed out with the classist liar remarks because it was personal in the way that Stolas had hurt Blitz. Now, why do Blitz and Stolas have this very unhealthy relationship between them? Well, first of all, you have to admit that Stolas and Blitz are both extremely traumatized, and the way they behave is how they're coping with the individual traumas of their situation. Trauma. And the second and most important reason is classism. It's fucking classism. Hell of a Boss is a show directly about classism. It's not about broad politics, unfortunately, but it is about classism. It's a show about classism that also isn't really trying to comment on current political events, which is certainly a decision, but that's what the show is trying to be. Now, Blitz has been using Stolas for sex, but he has been using Stolas for sex because he fundamentally has trouble with intimacy and creating real and genuine relationships. He is always taking advantage of these class dynamics and these unequal power imbalances because he is a very smart and very talented businessman who is also extremely morally bankrupt, who is only using his business as a way to achieve class freedom. Like, he is trying to only liberate himself, ostensibly. If he was trying to help everyone else, he wouldn't have started a business to begin with. Which is where a lot of the tensions with Blitzo's character lie, and a fundamental piece to understanding his character that a lot of people either willfully ignore or don't understand because they don't understand how Hell of a Boss and the business factors into the show. And with Stolas, you have this incredibly classist liar who's made a lot of mistakes, but his mistakes are incredibly empathetic if you understand the kind of societal violence that he's supposed to represent. The one time in his life that he gets to be 100% honest with Blitzo, Blitzo basically hits him on the head with, you are a classist liar at the worst fucking opportunity possible, because when you're breaking up with your boyfriend, or I should say, when you are ending a sex friendship, the worst thing you can do, especially for someone that you still care about, is make them feel like shit for circumstances completely out of their control and out of their situation. Stolas' criticism of Blitz is 100% correct. Blitz has been weaponizing the relationship from the very beginning. He's been weaponizing the friendship that they had in the past in order to achieve individual freedoms for himself. Not for his friends, not for the good of the society around him, but for himself, because he is a shitty, morally bankrupt businessman, which is what the show is commenting on. Now, Stolas is a classist liar. I've said this multiple times, but people read into Stolas is a classist liar in a way that absolves Blitz of all of his fucking personal responsibilities and of his shitty behavior, which is so frustrating because the show is trying to acknowledge that both of them are shitty and fucked up. I definitely think the offenses of Stolas are far greater in sociological nature than the offenses of Blitz, but neither of these men had control over their situations, and Blitz was willingly taking advantage of this man. You preyed on a vulnerable fucking person. It was eventually going to come back and bite you in the ass. Like your mental breakdown, your crash out, your episode is completely understandable in the circumstances that, of the sociological circumstances that the episode is trying to present. However, it does not negate the fact that what you said was extremely inappropriate for a person who did not have control over these circumstances. This is something you should have brought up at the very beginning of the relationship, but you didn't want to bring it up because if you brought up the fact that Stolas was a shitty classist liar at the beginning of the relationship, he wouldn't have given you an illegal way to start your business.